right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Vinny Presents. Today in studio, we have the CEO of Prince Marketing and best-selling author. He is Darren Prince. Darren, thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, first of all, it's a pleasure to have you on here. A lot of the stuff that you do, not just in marketing and all the celebrities and the wonderful things that you've been working on for many years, you're also a person that is helping the community, which is very near and dear to myself and many of our guests, which is the recovery community. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about your background. Tell us everything.
So I grew up in Livingston, New Jersey, and it was a great childhood. There was no reason on the outset that you would have thought somebody like me would have fallen victim to drug addiction. But I guess I always look back, and I think being classified as having a learning disability, being in small classrooms, my friends were in bigger classrooms, being verbally teased because of it. I never spoke up. And I think a lot of that, when I took it into my teenage years, started having, some pretty serious ramifications. And I was at sleepaway camp in the summer of 1984 when I was 14, had terrible stomach pains one night. And the nurse gave me this green liquid that I had no idea what it was, but within 5 minutes, my life changed forever. I all those insecurities, I had self-esteem, I had self-worth, self-confidence. I felt just as cool and smart and popular as everyone else. And the very next night, I remember there was no stomach pain, but I lied to the counselor. I wanted more of it. And I did this for 3 straight weeks, every single night, and found out I was taking liquid Demerol when mom and dad came up for visitation day. And I do a lot of speaking around the world and around the country, and sometimes there's moms, like, you hear the oohs and the ahs, but it wouldn't have mattered because I went to a dentist probably about 6 months after that to get my wisdom teeth removed. And for anybody listening in your audience, 1 in 3 teens that get opiates from a dentist become addicts. And I was one of the 3. And same thing. He didn't give my mom a lot. I think it was like 6. I noticed the second day there was only a couple left. I grabbed my cheek. I put the crocodile tears on. I'm like, Mom, my tooth is killing me. The loving mother, nobody wants to see their child suffer. She took me back to the dentist and gave her a refill of what I found out were extra strength Vicodins. And then I became a, pretty young serial entrepreneur. I had a baseball card company. So now I'm making money on top of the fact I could buy all the drugs and whatever it is that I need. So brought all my friends or so-called friends in on it with me, because Darren was the one that was successful, because I always needed that external validation for what was lacking on the inside. And eventually sold that company, started doing autograph signings with athletes and celebrities, sold that company, and started the agency with Magic Johnson and Smokin' Joe as my first 2 clients in 1994. And as I told you on our little pre-call, anybody from Philly, I'm going to make sure I talk to you, because Philly is it's definitely an interview I got to do, because he's so near and dear. Yesterday was the anniversary of Ali Frazier too. He would have been 80 on January 12th. He was just one of the most special humans in my life, and still in touch with some of the family members. And, so now here I am. I've got Magic, Smokin' Joe, Chevy Chase, Pamela Anderson, Dennis Rodman. I'm a 24, 25-year-old kid representing, as well as Muhammad Ali, some of the most iconic figures in the world and in culture. And who's going to tell me I got a problem? In the external space, making a ton of money. I'm rolling with the biggest stars in the world. And I lived that way for about another 14 years until I hit my bottom. And what started out as living to use turned out to using to live. And if you're passionate about recovery, you know exactly what that means.
That's amazing. I mean, I don't know where to begin, because it's an amazing thing, and I've never heard this before, and it's scary, but at the same time it's a very good lesson. Children and what they're being given and prescribed. I mean, we know about adults, and we know very well in Philadelphia how so many people were being prescribed things that they really didn't need or shouldn't even have had, and they wind up on Skid Row or K&A or whatever. And it's just a scary, heartbreaking thing to see all these people, adults. I've known contractors who've worked hard their whole lives, got a back injury, and then were overprescribed and opioids, and they're no longer here, or they're
Yep.
unfortunately beyond recovery. I hate to say it anyway, is beyond recovery, but I mean they're at the point of no return. With that being said, it's scary to know that it was actually even being done with children. I do remember some kids being on certain meds when I was younger. I'm like, I don't think they should be on that. But but you survived it, and God bless you for that.
Yeah, I mean, and there was no opiate crisis back in the 80s either. You know, it was a little bit more. I mean, there was no triplicates with prescriptions from doctors. They could literally call in Percocets or Vicodins in the 1980s as much as they wanted. I think even up into the early 90s when Oxycontins came around, that's when you had to start getting triplicates. And the state of Florida is clearly responsible for a lot of lives being taken because they had all those pain management clinics that thank God were shut down where people were driving and flying in from everywhere. And it was a cash pay center where you would just walk in and you could walk out with hundreds and hundreds of Oxycontins. So big pharma and those facilities just, you know, they did it's disgusting, you know, because not everybody, I think, has the addictive genes in them, but we all have some level of unresolved traumas and feelings of moments that have happened in our life. And when you can get yourself into a euphoric place and get whole from some sort of artificial type of product that you're putting in your body, really difficult to snap out of that world. You know, I had a chiropractor who's got no addictive sides to him whatsoever. And you know, we're kind of laughing about it, you know, when I first got sober 10, 12 years ago, that he had shoulder surgery and was working on all his clients. And he's like, look, he goes, I don't have the least bit addictive personality, but there was a certain point I'm looking forward, 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, take another pill, 3 o'clock, take another pill. Because then I stopped it once I didn't need them. But because I could see how so easily when you're teeter-tottering, it's just a relief to stay in that place versus somebody like me that really had to go deep into hell and have my own God spiritual awakening to really start doing the road work on my life and looking back and really not blaming anybody but me. You know, it's about accountability and then taking an action to make those changes in your life one day at a time. And then, you know, when you get to that place of safety, as so many people know in the recovery world, and hopefully you have a bunch of listeners, you know, we can't keep this gift unless we give it away to other people. And that's when I realized what my real mission and my real calling was in life, that I truly was able to turn my pain into my life purpose.
And Darren, I mean, that's why I really appreciate you doing this interview because I mean, you are a very busy person. You got a lot going on and so for you to take the time to do this means a lot. And it shows what kind of character you have too. So, you know, we really appreciate it. Now tell us about, of course you were a functioning, I guess you would say a functioning
High
addict,
function.
right?
Yeah.
Very high. I mean, you had a very successful business very young, and that could be, it's a blessing that you're still here because that could be very overwhelming for a lot of young people. So how, my first impression when you were talking about that is how did you go from kid from Jersey into having, I know you said you had the card industry, the card business, but how did you become like what got you to become an agent? How did that happen?
So what happened was when I would go to these baseball card shows, and noticing really it was baseball primarily. Now I know all the kids and investors are into basketball, hockey, football, the others, but back in the 80s, it was really baseball. The other stuff really didn't have much value. So they started bringing in iconic baseball players to these shows to sign autographs. Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams, Reggie Jackson, all the great Hall of Fame names. And I would notice the lines were wrapped around the corner with thousands of people waiting in line to get their autographs. So I go, this is really cool. I got to look more into this. And I realized that a lot of, you know, these superstars were available to do something known as private autograph signings, where you can contract them for a certain amount of time, a certain amount of hours to sit in a hotel room, a hotel suite, their office, whatever it might be, sign 500 items, 1,000 items. So I started through my Prince of Cards company at the time, this private autograph signing memorabilia business where we were distributors to a lot of other companies that couldn't afford to do full signings. So we would underwrite the cost of doing a big signing. Fortunately, I was able to do that. And then we became a retailer to the public. And back then, there was no internet, there's no social media. So we're running ads in a collectible trade magazine called Sports Collectors Digest that came out once a week. It had 400 pages in it, and just really built a great business. And what I loved about it, Pete, is it made me feel like cool that I was doing something a lot more fun than baseball cards. So always those isms of feeling a less than. I was always looking to align myself with something. Look at Darren Prince. Look at what he's doing. Look where he's around. And the first signing I did was actually with Muhammad Ali. And I went for the biggest name in the world. And it was such a special day in 1994 that his agent, Harlan Warner, who brought me into the Ali team, says to me one day, we're on the phone. He goes, you have to have a relationship with living back in New Jersey. You got to get a relationship with Smoking Joe Frazier. He's an hour and a half away from you. There has to be a time that we can get these two kings together to break bread, make peace. And I think you could be a major person to orchestrate that. And it was just ironic. I wrote about it in my book, Aiming High. A few months later, I'm in San Francisco at a convention because we had to have Muhammad sign a bunch of stuff. And I just got a brand new puppy. And I went to walk him at like 1 a.m. because we had an early flight the next day. I literally see Smoking Joe Frazier walking in the lobby in a black suit with a black hat and the gold chain and the rings. I mean, he looked like the pimp of all pimps and, the most regal king in the world, just, talking to the people at the front desk. He saw me, walked right over to my dog. It was ironic because I named my dog Tyson. And he goes to me, what's the name of the dog? He goes, hey, this Tyson ain't going to kick my ass, though. He goes, he's a little Tyson. And he goes, what you do, man? What you doing here? And I told him, he goes, oh, man, you work with the butterfly? You got to call me. He goes, we'll have a lot of fun and make a lot more money together. He gave me one of those Smoking Joe Frazier business cards. And a couple of days later, I called him and his son Marvis. I went down a few weeks later, started booking him for a lot of autograph signings. And then eventually, the reason I got out, as I write about in my book, I don't want to give it all away. I got in trouble with the FBI. There was a big investigation for fraudulent Michael Jordan autographs that I was involved with unknowingly selling during, probably about a year and a half period. It really hurt me financially. And it was one of those, I guess, life God moments where I could have gone back into the business, but, there were so many haters that were all cheering for me when I was on top. And I don't want to have to try to reinvent the wheel. And I was away on a fly fishing trip with my dad in Alaska with the last $3,000 to my lane. Old school Jewish guy did not want me spending the money, but I had to take him away. I knew we needed the break. And that trip changed the course of my business career because he asked me on the boat, what's your next move? And I go, Dad, I want to become an agent. I really think I can do this, but I don't have 8 years to go to law school. And he drops the fishing pole and he looks at me and goes, law school? Why do you go to law school? Life is about who you know, Darren, not what you know. You realize you have Muhammad Ali, Magic Johnson, Rodman and Pamela Anderson and all the people that I had back then, Chevy Chase and Joe Montana. There's not an attorney in the world that wouldn't kill to have these relationships. Why don't you talk to Magic the next time you're with them? And I was in 1995, I guess, around that point when I saw Magic, and I had the courage I was in a hotel suite with him. I was nervous as heck. He asked how the business was going and what my plan is, and I asked him if he would be my first client, and he's like, I'd agree to that. You're a good guy and you made a mistake. And I know all about making mistakes. And this is a few years removed from his HIV announcement. He goes, but if you don't use me to knock down every door to bring in all the celebrities you can, I'm going to fire you before the 2 years that I'm going to give you is up, because life isn't about how successful I become. It's how successful I make you and everybody else around me, because I'm going to be a success that they've never seen in the world of retired athletes. He even knew it then. He manifested it. He goes, but then once you get there, then you pay it forward to other people. I couldn't believe it. It was one of the biggest names in the world telling me I can go out and exploit them. And man, over the next month, it was like I had a field day. I called up Smoking Joe. I said, I'm Marvis. I'm starting my agency. Magic's coming with me. It was almost like a Jerry Maguire without the competition of other agents trying to steal my clients. And everybody came on board because I established a great personal relationship with them and this family vibe and love and respect through the autograph signings. And then I just started parlaying it. And, now we focus on everything from endorsement, Super Bowl commercials, keynote speeches, endorsement deals, intellectual property, book deals, movies, TV shows. And it's just remarkable. And fortunately, and unfortunately, my dad got to live through the first 8.5 years of my recovery journey. He passed on February 15th, 2017. He had a sober son for 8.5 years, and he got to see my agency get to a point that he was still shaking his head, because since then we've added, Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and Charlie Sheen and Carmen Electra. And, I booked Tom Brady last year for Grant Cardone for 10X. And, we just have so many incredible, unique relationships. Mike Tyson, who worked with a bunch, Vander Holyfield. And so he pulled me aside one day and said, "You're probably not going to have kids," because he knew I was divorced, broken engagement, wasn't really on my radar. But he goes, "What I love is that God touched you so you can help other mommy and daddy's kids. On a professional level, you'll never understand what it's like." And hopefully you remember this one day, that the teacher becomes the student. And that really got me emotional, because I was like, here's the guy that was my best friend in the world, confidant, always believed in me at a young age, noticed that my brain didn't work like my other friends in certain areas, but knew when it came to numbers and other things that I had a part of my brain that nobody had. And he honed in on that. And he goes, "This is why you're going to be a success. Forget what the teachers and the guidance counselors say or your friends say." And, I built a multi-million-dollar baseball card company as a teenager because, the guidance was there and the support was there. And it's just so important to have that. And nothing made him more proud of when I got sober on July 2nd, 2008. He saw me go deep into hell. And, overdoses, my mom and dad in my early 20s had to go to the hospital at 3 a.m. I had 90 stitches in my face, fresh out of an outpatient program that I went to for a year. That night, I decided to go celebrate with a friend who fell asleep behind the wheel, and my face went into the windshield. And, to see the look of hopelessness on their face when I came through in the ER, it's just a terrible thing, because, as addicts and alcoholics, we don't destroy us, we destroy everybody else around us. So for a mother and a father to both see the revival and the comeback of their child, work colleagues, friends, relatives, it's just incredible. And then I just realized too, this platform I have, man, that when my dad passed the night before I saw him in the hospital, I held his hand. I told him I loved him. I said, "Send my love to Smoke and Joe and Muhammad," because he was already gone from the earlier, Grandma, Grandpa. I said, "But that this experience of you being in the hospital for 32 days has been so mind-blowing for my recovery that I never felt so comfortable being uncomfortable because of my spiritual faith and my connection to the fellowship and my connection to God and the service work that I do. I'm going to touch the world in some capacity while you're up there watching. I don't know what it is, but something's going to happen." And it was a couple of weeks later, I was just randomly in LA and met a woman on Instagram who was in recovery, still is. And she just started a publishing company. And we met for lunch and had a conversation just like you and I are. And she goes, "Your story is absolutely mind-blowing. Would you ever consider writing a book?" I was like, "Not really," because my dad would always talk to me about it, and a lot of my clients' stories are too personal. I don't share that. I take that to the grave. She goes, "I'm not saying all these client stories. You can show people what it was like to be a super agent to most iconic stars of all time, like going deep into hell, but coming out of the other side and showing the beauty of recovery. This will be your legacy." And that was it. Aiming High was born.
And there's so much to what you just said. It's amazing. I think without being dramatic, I would say your life has really been touched by the hand of God. I mean, it's amazing that, and I think the key word I'm taking away is service. That you were saved. You could have got. I mean, God forbid, you could have died probably a half dozen times at least. It sounds like
Yeah.
God saved you. He served you. He helped put you where you're at, and now you're paying it back. And a lot of people don't do that. So that says a lot about your personality.
It's everything. I mean, it comes first. I mean, even before I spoke to you, somebody called that's struggling, and somebody a couple of days ago called a corporate client's son, took his own life from this disease, and you could have all the money and all the success in the world if you don't deal with what's going on in here and in here and in here. I mean, I fell to my knees on July 2nd with the last of my opiates in my hand on the top of the world as a sports and celebrity agent, broken, beaten, and defeated, and screamed out to God to take the money, take the notoriety, take the business. I'm begging you for a single day of freedom. If you take me out of hell, I will spend one day at a time taking others out with me. And I've kept my word. Um, I go to these huge business summits and conferences that all my celebrities are booked at. Joe Montana had one a couple of weeks ago. David Goggins is my guy. He's booked all the time, and Hulk's done him, Magic's done him. And I tell a lot of the coordinators that run it, like, it's great that they're giving that motivation, but I feel so many of these business mastermind events are missing the mark on mental health. Because I was that guy that got to the top, but didn't feel worthy of any of it. That was in a dark place in my heart and my soul and in my core. And real success, if you have a young audience or any age for that, like, it's not defined by the exterior stuff. Yeah, it's nice to have financial freedom and to take care of family and to travel and do things like that. But I had way more than I ever have now when I was using it. I would never in a million years go back to that place, because now life is a balance for me. I've never been so happy. And being in a place of service and always working on me. Because like I said on Jay Shetty's podcast, he's a dear friend. I'm not exactly who I want to be. I'm not yet where I want to be. But thank you, God, I'm not the person I used to be. Always trying to be vigilant of my character defects, trying to work through them, talk them out. I got a spiritual life coach, my guy Lingerie, that's a manifestation guru and puts me into meditations. And, every once in a while I check in with my addiction therapist a few times a year, speaking all over the country and all around the world, speaking to people in recovery, because it's not just about putting the drink and the drug down. It's a spiritual way of life. I tell people I've got a sign in my bedroom, a neon sign that says, say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean. In the heat of an argument, the next time you're going to open up your mouth and snap at somebody, remember this. It's better to feel all right than right. Because your day is just going to manifest crap the minute you open up your mouth and you snap. Laws of attraction, not going to be there. I'm not always perfect at it. I'm way better than I've ever been. And I try to understand people instead of me being understood to avoid arguments. I'm not a doormat, as I've learned from my sponsor in the fellowship. Believe me, if I'm pushed, it's a side that people don't want to see. But then I pay the price. I pay the price for acting out. And that ego that I need to keep dead and buried comes out. Then Darren has an emotional hangover for days or weeks that I can't get rid of because I've given up the rights to all chemical relief. I can't have a glass of wine, smoke a joint, take a pill. Can't do it.
Yeah, you're so right, because myself, I battle with that too. Being raised with a very strong, dominant Italian father figure type, it's all about respect, and how dare they disrespect you, and how dare they take you
Yep.
for granted, and egotism. That's one of my biggest issues that I grapple with myself, is trying to put myself and not getting so insulted or so taking things that don't need to be to a different level. Because you're absolutely right. I mean, it's all about how you twist it and how you turn it and how you view it. If you just
Well, then you're perfect. Remember, say what you mean what you say, and don't say you mean. And that came from my Italian sponsor, a guy from Newark that's got 38 years sober, Steve Della Valle. shout out. He's an icon in the New Jersey world of recovery with all the treatment centers and the galas that he's run. Did a lot of time, rejuvenated his life, street kid from Newark. And it's one of the greatest things he ever told me. And I told him I'm stealing it 15 years ago. I've said it on stages. I've said it on the biggest interviews, the biggest podcasts. And it's one that just blows people away because you don't need to be into recovery to understand that. Say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean, and watch the reaction of the other person. If you can get into that routine, if your kids do something, try it next time because it's repetition, it's discipline. Each time you do it, you'll feel core will feel better. You're gonna actually get a better reaction than our egos taking over and be like, how could you do that to me? Or how dare you? But like so many of my friends are old school Italian guys in their 50s now. I get it, but a lot of them have gravitated to it, you know? Us Jewish guys are more like subdued. We would hire the Italian guys to do our yelling and everything else back in Livingston. So, but we have so many commonalities, the Jewish and the Italian families.
Well, I want to point out one thing for sure that I noticed that is different. The difference between Jewish fathers and Italian fathers. Your father was very supportive, and when you told him what you wanted to do, instead of being a lawyer, he supported you. Now, if that was an Italian father, he would say, "Well, you're crazy."
But you're crazy. Get the heck out
job.
of this house and get a job and do something with yourself. Yeah, I've got so many of my friends, Rob Belker, Bruno. I mean, we laugh about these all the time. But yeah, no, it is a little bit because the Jewish father is so focused on the money and the success that he can instill into his son and daughter. And my father was in advertising, and he, you know, it was just something his uncle, my uncle, his brother, and my uncle Stu on my mom's side, very successful contractor. But he noticed the isms to my uncle Stu indirectly. He's the reason I got this gift of recovery. Him and his then girlfriend were in recovery and knew I was at my wit's end. And within a couple of days, I made the turn because of him and her. He passed a couple of years ago. You know, struggled with coke and alcohol his whole life. Finally put maybe like 10, 12 years together later in his life, but then went to food addiction, put on a ton of weight. And he would always tell me at that young age, and then even when I got sober, because you have the isms with money. I go, what do you mean? He goes, you don't understand it. He goes, it came to you so easy that your freeness to give it away and help so many people and just spend just to enjoy life. I get it. He goes, but the day that I'm not here, or your father's going to remember that I'd be more impressed not with what you made, but what you kept. And so I started being much more disciplined with that once I got sober, because I realized, you know, people forget about the good times. And I'm a guy, I mean, I'm single now. There's no woman in my life. I don't have a family. Like, I don't want to have to be in a situation later in life, you know, the clients could retire or whatever. And, you know, I could still be very generous, take care of a lot of people. But part of my recovery is also not being so in that place of over the top, doing what I got to do for people, or recklessly spending in another way of acting out in my isms, but just trying to find ways of moderation to enjoy life. And I'm glad that I got to that place, because, you know, people don't understand it. When you're 14 and you're making a couple $100,000 a year selling baseball cards, who's going to give me a handbook how to understand money? Who's going to tell me you can't spend $100,000 on a car? That's insane. Nobody your age has a car that's more than 15, 20 grand. Well, Darren went out and bought a Acura NSX at 21 years old and put another $50,000 of work into it, because I was making $500,000. So it was something that I struggled with for a very long time. It's no different than these athletes. You know, Mike Tyson and I had a great talk one day after a corporate event. You know, had a couple 100 million, 19 years old, heavyweight champion of the world. Who gives you a handbook? You know, any of these guys. You know, Ric Flair has told me stories about when the success came young, and you know, happened to Dennis Rodman. You know, so it's not always like, how could they blow through all that money, or how could they live that life? There's no college course, or I'm sure you have friends that are very successful at a young age. It's no different. You don't have to have fame and recognition. It could be in any sector of business or branding. When it comes to you at a young age, you know, it could It could play tricks with your ego. It could play tricks with who you surround yourself with. You get brainwashed by the way everybody's treating you. And then you really don't have an ability to go deep into your core to do self-reflection on who you really are, because that success is overtaking everything. And the way people treat you is overtaking everything, because it's that constant need of validation and acceptance.
Amen. I mean, look, it's so easy to fall into that trap too, because people always say, how could they have lost their fortune? I mean, there's no limit to how much you can spend out there.
No.
You're helping, trying to help other people. You're giving money away. You're buying stuff. You make investments that are bad. You have bad managers, maybe, or
Yeah,
people,
exactly.
people
Trusting
mess
too
up.
many people to do the right thing. Yeah.
Family members. How many family
Yep.
members exploit their own?
Yep. 100%.
Now, a question for you, Darren. That picture of Rocky behind you, was that staged?
That my boy Nicky C, Nick Cardasco, was Stallone's business partner in the Sly Stallone shop, and they were out there last month doing the launch of the
Yes.
pop-up store. So yeah, Sly signed that to me. It says, "To Darren, keep punching, Sly Stallone." But I can't really see it too clear. There's a glare here. The pinnacle moment in my career was getting Joe and Muhammad together. It finally happened.
Nice.
Where the night before the All-Star game in 2002, me, Joe, and Marvis, and actually Nick was with you, Nicky C. We had dinner in Ollie's suite with him, his wife Lonnie, his best friend at the time, Howard Bingham, the photographer who has since passed, and Howard's son Damon, who has since passed. And it was just a breathtaking moment to see them hug and make up. And they both had some tears. And the next day, the NBA threw a curveball without telling me. They wanted me to think that we were going to be sitting somewhat near Ollie at the game. They sat us right next to each other. So there's pictures all over the internet and shots and videos from around the world that called it a piece of history. And I'll give you a little bit of backstory on it. I was high for both experiences, man.
Wow.
I just didn't feel worthy of it. Before I picked up Joe in his room to take him to Ollie's suite, and I write about this in my book too, I was busy snorting Percocets, because that little kid, that broken kid from New Jersey, couldn't believe that the two kings of kings loved and respected me more than I ever respected myself. But to end that on a positive, sitting at the game with them the next day, center courtside, when Joe passed in 12 and Ollie in 16, I was sober. And Joe got to experience a sober for about 3.5 years. Ollie, I saw him once. He wasn't in the best shape. I don't think he really remembered me because of the Parkinson's. But what a beautiful situation to be able to escort Muhammad and Lonnie to Joe's funeral and make sure he got in and out safely, comfortably. And then when Ollie passed in 16, Lonnie texted me that she would love for me to come to the service. And now I'm here as the sober, present, comfortable, spiritual, God-loving, sober Darren Prince. And you couldn't ask for anything more. These two men that impacted my life so very much so, much more than business, to have personal relationship with guys like that we'll never see two like again, that any sport around the free world, rival-wise, you hear it all the time. This is the Ollie Frazier of soccer. This is the Ollie Frazier of basketball. It's, for the next 100 years, we'll be hearing reference to Ollie Frazier. And I was just blessed to be a very small part of their lives and to have them make a huge impact on mine.
Yeah, Darren, I mean, I think I told you this off just a few months ago before we started the interview. So I used to see Frazier anytime he was around. Many years ago in the 90s, I used to work at and hang out at a place called Torano's, which was the Morano family in South Philly. And he used to go in there. And one night in particular, I mean, it was late at night. He comes in, he had the white, was it Mercedes, I believe. He comes rolling in, and he's by himself, buys the whole place a drink. Nobody buys him a drink back. I buy him, and then we hit it off from then. A couple other times hanging out. Hey, Vinny boy, he's called me Vinny boy.
Yeah.
One time he said this, I was like, I couldn't believe he said this. He was somebody brought up Muhammad Ali. Now, I didn't know how his opinion was towards Ali or not, but then I found out they were, they were cool, they were friends. But he says he grabs me, and I'm like, 120 pounds at that point, and he's like, "Here, feel this," and he gets his bicep, and I feel,
Yeah,
I mean, Darren, I'm sure it was
like
like
a
fucking,
rock,
oh, dude, it was like a cinder
like a
block,
rock.
and
It
he
was
was, I
funny
guess,
'cause yeah, I love how everybody has a great Joe Frazier story. Chuck Zito's been my boy for 30 years, and we caught up a couple of weeks ago, and he's got his documentary coming out. And he was like, "Man, I wish Joe was here." He goes, "Do you remember the fun we had, Baba, over the years and going to the fights?" And I go, "Chuck, what about when we used to take him to scores in New York City and he hated it? And we would have to sit in the dining room area because he never understood it. He goes, man, why are you guys going to a bar where you got these dancers? They just got to give them their money. And he just never understood it. I got to sit here, have a steak and a drink, and maybe watch the fights. So
well,
yeah,
I mean, I got the impression that Joe was a really godly man. I thought he was really like a really straight. I never seen him do anything out of line. Always respectful,
no,
always nice, very generous, or maybe too generous at times.
too generous, too generous. But he always said there's no wrong way to do right, and there's no right way to do wrong. I mean, that was him.
Yeah.
Blue collar all the way, and treated everybody the same. I mean, we had dinner one night with Denzel Washington. I had him in L.A. and Lionel Richie comes running out of Mastro's, chasing after him, screaming his name, and I mean, De Niro, Pacino, Spielberg, Mel Gibson, Dustin Hoffman. I just can't even tell you the reaction. I mean, in a room of all the alphas, he was the king. Anyone he ever walked into. Justin Timberlake, 50 Cent at his vitamin launch water party in the city. Beyonce had her magazine cover party at Gotham. And my boy Jason Bin, Gotham magazine, called up and said Beyonce and her dad would absolutely love to meet Joe. Is there any, if I sent you a card, would she come? And Joe goes, yeah. He goes, let's do it. Let's go. I mean, it was, yeah, he was just President Clinton, Michael Jackson. I mean, I've seen it. And they were just in awe of him. And treated every single person the same. I remember before we were going to Nobu one night in New York City, I think we are going to meet De Niro and Chef Nobu, and I was like, "You excited to see De Niro?" He goes, "It's my guy." He goes, I don't get excited, Prince, like other people might say." I'm like, "That's Robert De Niro," because he's Bobby to me. He's my friend. And I was like, he was just like that with everybody.
Yeah, he was just a real guy, man. I mean, anybody didn't. It's sad that. I mean, I wish he was still with us, but he was just a really good guy, man. Really good guy.
I mean, as genuine as they get. I mean, my 40th birthday, I was 2 years sober. And the story is always hard for me to tell, but he just had back surgery for like the final time. And he called my dad, and he was a little disappointed because it wasn't healing right. And he goes, Dad, I don't think I can make it to. He would call my dad, Dad. He'd call me Prince or Boss Man. And he goes, I don't think I can make it to Prince's birthday. And my dad goes, look, I'll speak to him. I'll understand. He knows that you're recovering, and it's challenging to sit in a car for an hour and a half to get up here in 3 hours of driving. And Joe goes, who else is all coming? He goes, well, I know Magic's flying in, and Rodman and Vinny Pazienza and Zito and everybody. So he's going to have enough of the family clients there. And that actually made Joe even more annoyed that they were all coming. And he goes, you know what, Dad? Let me just call this goddamn doctor and figure out, because I got to get there now. And so I get there, and he's sitting at the bar area. I walked in with Magic, and they gave each other a huge hug. I mean, the love and the respect they had for one another was incredible. And he stayed for about an hour. I had about 100 people. And at one point, I was trying to find him. I said to my dad, where did he go? And he goes, Champ left a little while ago. He's a little uncomfortable with his back pain. He said, oh, he'll call you tomorrow. I said, how long ago? He goes, about 5 minutes. So Vinny, it's freezing out. I run downstairs, long sleeve shirt on, no jacket, middle of February, New Jersey winter, which you know what it's like in Philly, probably 10 degrees. And I catch him at the end of the block getting into his limo. And I stop him, and he goes, boss man, what you doing? He goes, you got your paw. I'm like, you just left. I had to give you a hug, and I had to thank you. I was like, my grandmother passes away. You came to my parents' house for 3 straight days to sit Shiva, which is what we do in the Jewish faith, to pay respect. I was like, my wedding, you came up 2 days early to make sure everything was work. Like, I'm like, Champ, the things you do, some of my closest friends in the world don't do. And he goes, "Hey, boss man, let me stop you." He goes, "Whether it's you, mom, dad, or sis," meaning my sister, "good or bad, I got to be there. That's where the Lord wants me." And to this day, I've never heard a human being say that, but that was Joe Frazier.
Yeah, you would never know if you didn't know him as a celebrity. You would never know he was that much of a popular person and such a star, man. But he was just a regular guy.
Yep.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a lesson. There's lessons. There's many lessons, and I want to wrap up the interview because I know you're, like I said, I
Yep.
appreciate taking the time. And speaking of Stallone behind you, yourself, and many others that come to mind, certain people are just touched, in my opinion, touched by the hand of God. When I say that, I mean they're chosen. It's not an easy thing because a lot of these people go through a lot of heartache and struggle and pain.
Yep.
It's almost like putting that fire and pounding with that hammer, like, but you got to go through all that to become what you became. But the hidden lesson is that I believe God wants you to now help others, just like Stallone. I mean, it's amazing the type of. I mean, Rocky will probably for generations say this all the time. For generations,
Ah,
it'll inspire generate millions and trillions of
forget it.
people. The work that you're doing, and I never knew this. I really didn't know too much about you, but the more I've learned from doing this interview, I'm inspired. It makes me feel good because there's things that are personal in my life that you're really hitting a lot of buttons on, and it's most people, sadly, most people can't do it. They just can't get themselves. But I think with people like you and the good work that you're doing, there's a lot of good that's going to be done just from your book, from your, you do speaking engagements, you do these type of interviews. Who knows who you may never know the amount of people you're really impacting, but it's going to be a lot of people.
Yeah, and man, one last thing, I appreciate that, man. When the book started doing really well early on and making a bunch of money, I realized there was a bigger purpose, and I was able to start my own foundation, my own 501(c)(3), the Aiming High Foundation. And so when I speak, I don't take any money for it. I ask for contributions because, it's the greatest thing in the world. We're affiliated with Banning Treatment Centers. They have 16 properties across the country, and we have a veteran program that we cover all the veterans' flights to come in for treatment. Right there in the Delaware area, Novak's house. Brandon Novak is one of my spiritual brothers. We've scholarship countless people into his sober living facilities. I'm probably going to be out there come spring and go speak again to about 100 to 150 alumni. We have an Oaks Recovery out of South Carolina that we, contribute anytime we can. And the funding's there. I mean, that's the greatest thing in the world, to be able to have the ability to just help people that don't have the financial means, but actually have the willingness, because the willingness is the hardest part. And you only have that split second to make an impact in their life. And you're not just impacting their life if they get this precious gift and they get the life that they always dreamed about. It's everybody else around them. The greatest thing in the world. It's better than any sort of business deal that I can do, and I often say if I lost the business and the money, it'd be heartbreaking. I could dial down my life. It'd be heartbreaking the people that I love and care for so much that work with me, my mom, and but for me, I found me. I've found what real self-love is on the inside. I've found looking at the mirror and loving every part of myself internally, and knowing that I did the work and I do the work. I continue to do the work. Last night, as tired as I was, I jumped on a 12-step meeting at 6 o'clock and shared, because it's everything to me. It's first in my life. Doesn't matter if we have a huge deal being closed for Magic or Hulk or Chevy Chase or whatever it might be. That's what I do. That's my career. Who I am is where you're getting now. And when God touched me on July 2nd, 2008, and Hulk Hogan often says that it was the quote he gave on the back of my book, that you asked God for the blessing on July 2nd, 2008. And it took a little bit of time, but after a while, he said, because you came to me correct, son, touched me and said, you're now going to be a blessing to other people.
That's the thing. I mean, and we have to remember too, it hurts those around us more than us.
Yep.
We're hurting our families. We're hurting people that our friends, people that care about us. It hurts them more. there's people sadly right now that are grieving over a child that they don't even know where they're at. They're on the streets. They're
Yep.
doing drugs.
We lost
It's
3 lives in
tragic.
America. We lost 3 lives in America, man, on this phone call
Yeah.
from the opiate crisis.
I know very well. Philadelphia, unfortunately, K&A, man, it's the epicenter. I see this stuff and it just burns me up because I'm like, you just see two long streets filled of people that are just they're just
Heartbreaking.
they're just stuck, man. They're just stuck. And I say to myself, I just get really angry at some of the local politicians. I'm like, come on, there's nothing anybody could do. Like these poor kids. I mean, and older people are out here just with no mercy, no help, nothing. It's sad.
It's terrible. I mean, it's like what's his name? Jelly Roll, the singer that's like a phenomenon now. Is that the name? You guys know his name? Jelly Roll, or he's got tattoos, like country type of guy. Just one bunch of words you don't know. I got to get this name fixed. I just found it on Instagram. Hold on. He's like a juggernaut right now. Hold on, I got to give this to you before we hang up.
Roll, you're making me a little hungry now.
Yeah. So I saw him speaking to a viral video online where he was speaking to Congress, and he was on the other side. He was a drug dealer years ago, and is so remorseful for what he's done to lives back then. And he goes, can you imagine if one airplane a day with 187 lives was going down? That's what's happening with the opioid crisis. And what are we doing about it? It's getting worse. It's getting worse.
I know what you're talking about, Darren. Now I remember the guy you're talking about. And then when you mentioned he's speaking to Congress, now I remember. I remember that comment that he made. He's absolutely right, and it's an interesting way to put things in perspective. But like, what's it going to take? You know, when is all the corruption going to just stop and just realize we're destroying our generations of people? It's sad.
And look, it's still mental health. You don't have to have sympathy for addicts and alcoholics. Yes, we made a choice. It's not a born or developed disease. It's a psychological impairment. It's an esteem issue. It's a trauma response. We don't get addicted to the drugs or the alcohol. We get addicted to the escape from whatever underlying issues we haven't addressed. So if people could understand that more, so that it's more of a psychological, mental health type of situation. Yeah, don't have sympathy for the guy that's blowing through all the family money and whatever. I get that. I mean, but it's an underlining root response that is causing us to behave like that. And if we could put a bigger emphasis on the mental health crisis tied into the opiate epidemic, there'd be a lot of change. I said it when I was at the White House. I was there 3 times. President Trump was a good friend, worked with him on Celebrity Apprentice with several of my clients who did some licensing deals. And I got to spend time with Kellyanne Conway and Governor Chris Christie. And I was like, if they just developed a course in grammar school on self-worth, where everybody, the jocks, the nerds, the smart people, everybody, all the cliches can be in one room talking about how they feel on any given day and throw it out there, it would change the course of history. Guaranteed. Guaranteed, because that's where it's...
I started off. I agree with that. I have 3 small children, and I realize the difference it makes how I'm able to really encourage them, because they could be in a real sad spot about something, and I just make them look at it, just tweak it a little bit differently, and then they're happy. And that's the thing, man. And we don't have enough people when they're at that early age to help them with their confidence, with their motivation, because if you set them right on a good path and you fuse that into their brains at an early age,
yeah,
I see how it works. I see how other people have raised their
especially in
kids.
those development years, like you just said. When it's in those development years, it's everything. I mean, because they're so hooked on social media now and bringing in content that they really don't need, and causing jealousy. They're envious. There's bullying that's going on. This one has that. I want this. This one got more likes. This one has more followers. Like, what does that mean?
It's turned into.
I want more followers so I could get to more people with my platform for mental health. If business comes out of it, whatever, so be it. We've never needed social media, but I want to be a bigger voice because nothing lights me up like a DM that I'll get on Instagram and Facebook of somebody saying, "Hey, I saw you on Vinny's podcast, or I saw you on Jay Shetty, I saw you on this one," and thank you. You know, I joined the 12-step fellowship, or I went for the help that I needed, or do you have any time to possibly speak with me because my brother's suffering, my husband, my wife, my sister. Well, I mean, that's why I want a bigger platform. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning, makes me tick. That's what makes me fulfilled. I've finally got that self-esteem I shared with you that I didn't have at a young age by doing esteemable acts. And I think people need to understand that more. You don't develop self-esteem because of having private jets and mansions and the flashiest jewelry and the nicest clothes and being the best looking or the most fit. You develop it from the inside, the person that you are. And it starts with being a service to other people and being kind to other people.
Dan, you're right. And you're in the business, and I'm just a blue collar guy from Philly, but I can see it because I have a lot of friends that are actually involved in the movie industry. I'm an amateur screenwriter about to do our first film, but I've talked to people that have been very successful in the movie industry. It doesn't matter about the popularity or the money. I mean, a lot of these people but don't feel well inside. They don't feel whole. So it's not about the money's not going to get you there. The popularity is not going to get you there. It comes from within. I think you would agree with that.
Yep. You nailed it, bro. If there's no bet, the way you just said it, I think we ended right there. That was freaking flawless. It's exactly that was it, man. You get it. I'm so glad I jumped on this. This is a lot of fun, and I can't wait for it to go live because I know we're going to be able to help a lot of people for sure. That's the best part. We just need one, and I got a feeling down in Philly and the rest of your following, we're going to get to a lot more than one because. You know, don't be blinded by somebody's exterior success is the message that we all got something going on and be more impressed by who that individual is and what they do to impact others in their community, around the country, around the world, whatever it is that that person does in a giving sense of giving freely. And look, at times I need to be selfish so I could be selfless to other people. When I need my alone time and I'm not in the mood to talk to somebody because my brain's on overdrive, I let them know because it's about putting my mental health first. And there's only so much I can compute. And I need to make sure I'm in that space to get my rest, to get whatever it might be, so I can give as much more to the universe that afternoon, that next day, whatever it might be.
So I'll pretty much wrap it up by saying, you know, as I like to say, conquer yourself, then worry about conquering the world. But you have to conquer yourself first.
That's it, man.
So Darren, it's been great. Friends, please, and also that's the most important things. Tell us where we could find you. Where could people find you?
Okay, so at Instagram, it's at agent_DP. I have a Facebook page under Darren Prince. I think it's Brentwood, California or Los Angeles. My foundation website for anybody that could possibly make a contribution is aiminghighfoundation.org. And then we have our business website for anybody interested in hearing or talking more about celebrities or any projects, which is not on here, but I got to mention it because I don't want you to be bothered with that because it has happened where a host said he didn't say where we can contact him for business is princemarketinggroup.com.
All right. And of course, we're going to make sure we put all the links to everything in the description box. So make sure you check it out. Follow Darren and all his beautiful works. Please, I really encourage you to make a contribution to his nonprofit and help other people. I mean, there's a wonderful man in front of you. I don't know many people like you, Darren. I'm just not just saying that. This interview is really been it's touched me. It really has, man. You're a great guy. And anything I can do to support you, anytime I can share or spread the word, you know, you can count on me to do that. And let's remind the guests again to make sure they're checking out Aiming High, right?
Yep. Aiming High is my memoir. It's available on Amazon. If people are struggling out financially, I say it all the time, DM me your name, address, and email on my Instagram at agent_DP. I'll have the publisher ship out free copies, cover the shipping. The book was never about making money. Like I said, when I started my foundation. I'd rather put them in as many hands as possible. If you can't afford to buy a copy, just like I said, DM me there. We'll send them out for free.
There you go. That's beautiful. Thank you, Darren. And I'm sure I speak for God rest his soul, Smoking Joe, and many others up there when I say you're the man, Darren. God bless you, man. And I wish you all the best in everything you do. Thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you. We'll be in touch, man. Thank you.
All right, guys, thanks again. If you haven't already, please check out, and make sure you subscribe to my show. Make sure you're checking out Darren and all his beautiful work. Thank you again, Darren. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, man.
Ciao.